All right, Shimon Prokopets, thank you so much. Still lots to talk about here. Joining us right now is CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson, also attorney and jury consultant Alan Tuerkheimer. Good to see both of you. I wonder, on that note of the embed crew, Joey, you first. Is there any potential, I guess, legal ramification that comes with an embed crew? I only ask that because I wonder about the whole sanctity of the process and if there were parameters for the defense team allowing a crew to be in bed, or if that's just an independent decision.
Yeah, Frederica, good to be with you. So it's an independent decision. I mean, the defense attorneys are about preparing the case for trial. And with respect to that, there are obviously confidences that attach to conversations that they have with their client, which are ongoing. But the ultimate goal and objective here, from a defense perspective, was to, really pronounce a narrative that would resonate. The other issues and the sideshows that go along with it, and whether he'll be a political pawn or not, and the causes or what have you, that's just a separate, independent, and outside type of, thing that attaches to this. The bottom line here is that they had a job to do, which was to prepare their case. The prosecution's narrative, obviously, Frederica, being far different from theirs, but with respect to the legal issues, no. The reality is that as long as in court you preserve and otherwise do the job that you're prepared and really, want to do, that's as far as it goes.
Alan, I wonder what is your point of view on the fact that there was this embed crew? Does it speak to perhaps the confidence level that Rittenhouse and his defense team had in reaching a decision that was favorable to them?
I think they just wanted to cover all their bases and do everything possible and turn over every stone, not leave anything to chance. So you heard Mark Richards yesterday said he even did a little exercise where they had Rittenhouse appear in front of a mock jury, and one group heard from him and the other didn't. And he did better, Rittenhouse did, with the group that heard from him. So they decided to put him on the stand, personify him. And so I think everything that they did leading up to it is what good trial lawyers do. They don't leave anything to chance, and they try to take charge of the situation and put everything in place that's going to give them the best chance of, in this case, an acquittal.
And then, Alan, let me ask you a little bit more about that preparedness, that really studying the jury, doing these mock, trials. I mean, this is not something that every defense team can afford, but obviously it pays off for the team if they can do something like this. How unusual is it?
It's become more and more common, and certainly people with means are at an advantage, just like they are hiring certain lawyers and having access to the legal system. There's different ways to do it. I don't know exactly what his methodology was with the mock jury exercise, but even just getting people in to evaluate Kyle Rittenhouse for half-hour videotape testimony and getting feedback will be of value. And again, I don't know exactly what his methodology was, but it's so invaluable to get feedback on a defendant and trying to inform whether or not the defendant should testify. And it's key to get feedback from people who approximate the actual jurors. So it's one thing if you're going to ask somebody in your office or a relative to give feedback when they know that you're representing Kyle Rittenhouse. You really want to get people who can really be objective, people from Kenosha County that don't know anything or just know very little about the case, so they can give you a fair and objective assessment.
And then, Joey, Wisconsin has a very favorable pro-gun law, or a variety of pro-gun laws, and the jury was made up of people from Kenosha. But given what you saw, do you think this verdict could have been different had the case been tried elsewhere, if there were a change of venue?
Yeah, it's so important, that question, because really it's about who you're speaking to. It's about the target audience. And we know that target audience is different in different jurisdictions. There are some jurisdictions, to your question, that are have favorable gun laws. There are other jurisdictions that don't. There's some jurisdictions that have the death penalty. There are others that don't. What am I speaking to? I'm speaking to the values and really the cultures of different states and different communities. And so it's not only in that particular state where you can have a jurisdiction perhaps that's more liberal or conservative than another. another, but it's in states throughout really the country. And so, of course, in the event that you select a jury that's more favorable to a particular issue, they would potentially produce a more favorable outcome. But this case really, Frederica, briefly, was about the battling narratives, the prosecution attempting to paint him, Kyle Rittenhouse, as an active shooter, a person who was indiscriminately going around exercising poor judgment, a person who shouldn't have been there in the first place, a person who came from another community, fancying himself a police officer or emergency medical technician. The jury didn't buy that. They brought the narrative of the defense, who were constantly bringing up the notion of rioters, of a mob, of this combative and caustic environment where their client had no choice but to do what he did. And so in the final analysis, I think this case turned on the framing of the narratives and the defense's ability to paint their client an immediate fear of death or serious injury, their ability to paint, the defense's ability, that is, to paint their client as a person who acted reasonably and responsibly. And that's what resonated with this specific jury. But in the final analysis, absolutely, depending upon who's sitting in those chairs, those 12 people, has a real effect upon how they visualize the case, interpret the facts, and render a decision.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there for now. Joey Jackson, Alan Tuerkheimer, thank you so much. We've got some breaking news we now need to attend to, but appreciate your input.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And now this breaking news, evacuation